first witness today was a neighbor of Michelle and Troconis, and this was about security cameras. This neighbor had a Ring doorbell system with 2 cameras that was motion activated. Those aren't all that reliable, the motion activated ones. To the casual listener, it might not seem to be any kind of a big deal or an issue that the police were unable to download them, so they instead had this lady email the footage to them. On hearing this, I expected the defense to ask a series of questions related to issues around chain of custody and that sort of thing. The witness testified that she sent footage starting from May 23rd at night sometime and the entire day of the 24th. But what she didn't say was whether or not she sent every single clip of everything that the Ring doorbell picked up. Or did she just send clips that the police requested, specific ones? So I was waiting for the answer to that as I was hearing her. The other thing that she said in respect to the motion activation is that, and I'm going to quote, "It reaches all the way across the street." The prosecution was asking about the motion activation. I'm not clear on what the witness understood, what she was answering. Now, I know those Ring cameras, they will turn on once a car drives by, depending on how you have them set. And I don't know whether Troconis knew or not that the neighbors across the street had Ring cameras and that they could reach all the way across the street. I'd be wondering if he'd ever asked anybody about that, considering he was so diabolical and so careful. You'd think he'd ask about the neighbor's Ring camera and the range on that. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. When the defense got up, they didn't ask questions about chain of custody. So I thought, okay, well, maybe they trust this lady. No reason not to trust her, I don't think. I don't know. I don't know if what kind of relationship she had with Michelle and Troconis. I don't know anything. And they asked, what did the police ask you to send? And the answer was part of the 23rd and all of the 24th. And that was the end of the defense questions. And I'm sitting here thinking, what? We still don't know. Yeah, they sent them for those days. Was it all of the clips? Was it every single clip that the Ring camera picked up? Or was it only clips that showed movement outside of Troconis Dulos' house? I don't know the answer to that still. The next witness was a sort of a neighbor. She lives on Eli Road, which is just down from Jefferson Crossing. Her surveillance cameras are continuously running and they capture Eli Road. And the police downloaded this video themselves. The state recalled Matt Riley. They talk about the search of the Tacoma. Riley testified the Tacoma appeared to be very clean. Even the tires were clean and armoralled. And there were seats from another vehicle in the Tacoma. Well, I'm thinking those would have been the Porsche seats, right? The seats that were inside the Tacoma were not fixed to the floor. One was propped up by a bucket and the other one was just sort of sitting there. They did a luminol test and it lit up, but when they did another test on it, it was confirmed that the area that had lit up was not blood. Every time they brought up the luminol and the KM, instead of objecting and arguing like he was before, I guess the defense believes, look, he's made his point, he's got it on the record. He was saying, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's the same objection, we don't need to talk about it, I'm stating it for the record. And that indicates to me that if she's convicted, they're going to appeal and this will be one of the issues. The police examined the seats and got a positive result for blood on a presumptive test. So they cut out this section of a seat and they sent the whole swatch to the lab. On June 26th, they seized the plates and screws from the Tacoma and sent them to the lab. they swapped the threads of the screws. Do you remember those other plates? The plates that Fotis threw away? If somebody had unscrewed the plates on the Tacoma and put on those fake plates to commit the crime and then replaced the Tacoma's proper plates, they wouldn't be thinking to clean off the threads of the screws. And a detailer isn't taking that apart and cleaning the threads of the screws either. So I thought this was very clever on the part of the CSIs. I have friends who are CSIs. Those guys think of places to look that would never occur to me or most ordinary people in a million years. The police then went back to the Tacoma again in August and pulled apart the door panel and cut out a section of carpet. On cross, the defense brought out that the plates on the Tacoma are combination plates, meaning they're for vehicles that are used for both work and personal. Pavel worked for Fotis. It looks like officially that truck was being used by Pavel for work purposes as well as personal. There are 2 bolts missing on the front and rear plates on each. Through the cross, the defense was able to clarify that the seats found in the bed of the truck were actually put there by police. Then the defense brings out the fact that these seats were not Tacoma seats either. They were Ford seats. This brings up a whole lot of other questions and possibilities. The defense tries to clarify that the lab tests that would confirm blood came back negative. The prosecution objected. The question is allowed anyway, but then the witness said he didn't know the answer to the question. Then the defense got into the horseradish point again, but he just sort of brought it up without going on about it. There was some confusion about whether the cutting from the seat came back as blood. Riley thought it did come back positive, but he seemed a little bit unsure. The defense seems confident that it was not. And so that was never really fully answered at this point. Throughout the cross-examination, the prosecution was objecting just as much as the defense was objecting at the beginning of the trial. Outside of the presence of the jury, it's revealed that no blood was found on or in the Tacoma. But here's the thing. That Tacoma had been detailed and the seats removed. So who knows whether or not any of the seats in that vehicle had been in that vehicle on May 24th. And some people might argue that the detailing is not really suspicious, that people do that, but I'm going to point out it's an 18-year-old truck and it's dinged up and it's got rust spots and everything else on it. Yes, it's true that people take meticulous care of their older vehicles as well, but I don't think that's the case here. And the reason I don't is because there's every sign on that vehicle that it was not meticulously cared for previously. Wait until you hear the results of this afternoon. Oh boy. The first witness of the afternoon was a forensic scientist specializing in fingerprints. He works for the lab. There were fingerprints found on Jennifer's Range Rover. Fotis and Michelle were eliminated as the source of those prints. Do you remember the doorknobs in Jennifer's house? They examined the prints on them. They were able to even develop another one, but it was inconclusive. And I want to point out that when it comes to the fingerprint evidence, any item that could have come from Michelle and Fotis's house could have Michelle or Fotis's prints on it, even if they weren't involved. They could also have Michelle's daughter's fingerprints, or if they had a cleaning lady, or perhaps even an employee. The prints inside Jennifer's house, though, there are only so many people whose prints should be or are expected to be inside her house. They went through a whole lot of items, and each time he's saying, no, we didn't find anything. Either it was inconclusive or it belonged to somebody that they expected it to belong to. Then we get to the garbage. One of the items was described as a clear plastic bag with brown stains and 3 holes cut in it. And they held up what was previously described as a poncho. So I don't know if you'll remember, it looked like there was 2 ponchos. One was clearly a poncho and it had a hood, and the other was cut out like a poncho. So it wasn't technically actually a poncho, but it looks to me like it was used like that. In any case, they tested that. They looked at that. They found no fingerprints on that. Then they looked at the actual poncho, the one with the hood. There were no fingerprints on that. They looked at the mop handle, no prints. There was a black plastic bag that had been tied and torn. No prints on that. Then they found 4 plastic bags, and 2 bags were attached to each other with black tape. And there was still an item inside one of the bags that was attached to the other. What they found was one of those yellow and green sponges. So they looked at the tape on the bag, and they were able to remove the tape, and they noticed there was writing that said Tour de France. But here's the thing that cinches it. They examined the tape itself, that black tape that was used to attach those bags, and they found fingerprints. If you have, say, a roll of tape, it's conceivable that you could use that roll of tape and your fingerprints would be on the outside of the roll because you're hanging on to it. But where they found the prints was on the adhesive side of the tape. Could you argue about that? Yeah, but not very well. The prints on the sticky side of the tape. They got a print that was sufficient for comparison, and it matched Foda's Dulos. Then they looked at another garbage bag, and they found a fingerprint on that. It was matched to Foda's Dulos. I think the prosecution was making a point of pointing out where on the bag the fingerprint was, whether it was the top or the center, and the fingerprint was in the center of the bag. I get where the prosecution's going with that, but there are lots of reasons why your fingerprint would be on the center of a bag. The thing here is, though, to me, it's those fingerprints on the underside of the tape. They looked at the knotted bag. Do you remember that? This is significant because out of all the garbage, everybody's throwing away garbage. The bags that were knotted were different from all the others because they were knotted in that fashion. It was unusual. And inside one of those knotted bags, they had found Jennifer's bloody bra and her bloody shirt. At the lab, they also found a piece of cardboard in the bag which they couldn't get anything off of. And there was that black tape inside the bag. Well, guess what? They went through the same process to try to get prints off of that black tape, and they found 5 prints. 1 was unsuitable for comparison. 4 came back to Foda's Dulos. If this was Foda's trial, he would be convicted. I don't think any reasonable person is going to say that he didn't kill her. After the break, he testified about examining that FedEx envelope. They found no prints. He pulled the plates out. Look at how muddy that plate is. Where had it been? They couldn't get prints from that plate or the tape that had been on the plate to alter the appearance of the numbers and letters. They also examined the plates from the Tacoma. No prints. The garbage can lid, no prints. The paper towels found in the kitchen of Jennifer's house, no identifiable prints. The cross-examination was very short. The defense asked if Michelle's prints were used to compare against these prints that they had found. And they were. And Michelle was excluded. Then the defense, I think he pulled a Columbo. He said no more questions. He started to walk away and he went, wait a minute. I have 2 more questions. And then he asks, were you asked to compare the prints you found on all these items to Pavel? And the answer was no. The second question, were you asked to compare to Kent Mawhinney? And the answer was no. So Pavel and Kent, who are obvious other suspects, weren't included in this comparison? Now what's that? I'm wondering if this defense lawyer is thinking what a lot of people are thinking. That's that there was tunnel vision happening here. That's all I got for you today. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.